Hey everybody, welcome to the Game Junkie Show. I'm your host, Crystal. Joining me this evening, everybody, please welcome Deadman. What's up?
Not a whole lot. Just trying not to melt. North Texas summers are not pleasant.
You guys got some, as they would say in New England, scorches. It's scorching out there right now.
I don't know what that means, but that sounds right.
Well, yeah, it's Bostonian for really fucking hot. If you
yeah, that's very accurate.
Yeah, y'all are really hot. And in Florida, it's really crazy. We're getting all these storms with like really bad hail, which is, it's never cold here. So we're getting these crazy storms that will just cool the temperature by like 15, 20 degrees really quick. And we're getting like massive ass hail balls. It's the Twilight Zone, man. It's the fucking Twilight Zone. And we're joined by...
it's very unusual in the summertime, especially in Florida.
I know, it's really weird. It's super strange, and you guys have crazy heat, and I don't know, maybe it's the end of times. It's a good thing we've been playing games like The Last of Us, because gamers are prepared for these moments.
That's true.
We will know what to do in these situations. We know how to identify loot. We know like what big baddies are probably going to have gear that we can grab. So find yourself a gamer for when the inevitable shit hits the fan is pretty much my advice. He doesn't really need an introduction, but Logic is here this evening.
Hey guys, what's going on? Hope everybody's doing well. Should be an exciting conversation.
It will be. If you're watching, you can see Logic's shirt. The Enough to Keep Going Network, which is a great podcast and YouTube show, has their own little fancy shirts now. So maybe I'm gonna have to get some shirts. All right, so let's break the ice. I got a question for each one of you guys, just something really simple so folks can get to know you. Dad, I'm going to start with you. By the way, this was Dad's idea, this backlog discussion. I think this is going to be an awesome discussion, and we do have some really cool stuff that you guys from the Twitter fam have shared with us. So, Dad, tell us, if you can, who is your favorite video game developer?
That's a tough one to narrow down. Business practices and everything aside, I'm gonna pretty much wholeheartedly say Square Enix. Enix. I'm never actually sure how to pronounce that. Any of my favorite series, for the most part, have always come from them. Kingdom Hearts, and here recently, Nier, Final Fantasy. I've played those pretty much as long as I've been playing games. So they're pretty much my go-to people for, like, if I see Square's name on the box, I'm probably gonna get it.
Didn't they publish Guardians of the Galaxy for Eidos Montreal?
That's right, they did. I haven't started that yet, but I do have the disc. It's ready to go. I'm excited to get into that. I've heard the gameplay does get a little bit repetitive, but the story can actually exceed what the movies have shown, and the movies are amazing.
I mean, I really like it. It's also my opinion. Every video game to me is repetitive. It's the cut scene in the story that like breaks it up. I hope you like it. I really think. Would you say it's on your backlog?
It is absolutely on my backlogs.
Oh, we'll have to talk about that in a little bit here. Logic, what about you? Who is your favorite game developer?
I wrote this up a little while ago, and I was trying to search my Twitter account. I don't know how to search my personal Twitter account on the web. I know how to do it on mobile. But I will. I had 4 or 5 studios up there. I will go with Monolith for right now.
I know what games Monolith makes, and now I'm drawing a blank. I feel like I just played one recently, maybe.
So,
the only ones I know off the top of my head are the 2 Lord of the Ring games, Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor. But I know they make more than that.
They've made a lot. So they were responsible for Fear, Middle Earth, Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, Gotham City Imposters way back in the day for those PS Plus subscribers, Condemned. The 2 that really kind of cemented them for me. So first of all, they're also responsible for Lithtech, which is an engine that a lot of development studios use. But the 2 big ones that stand out for me were The Operative, No One Lives Forever, and then No One Lives Forever 2, A Spy in Harm's Way. So those were kind of, if you're not familiar with them, they were kind of 1960s stylized, kind of James Bondish kind of spy first-person shooters, but it was a female protagonist.
They made that Matrix game that came out in the early 2000s, which I don't even know. I'm going to be honest with you, like as a gamer, I don't even know the objective of that game or if I even did it right. But I will admit, back in the early 2000s was a different time period for me, and I was always high when I played it, and I'm not good at gaming under the influence. So
Was it either one of these? Because they were both developed by Shiny.
They did the Matrix Online.
That
the online one. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's a game I'm talking about, Dad, that like I don't even know if I was playing that game right.
Well, it's an online MMO type game, so there's not a whole lot you can do wrong with it.
I think I put that to the test.
So they can make them idiot proof, but they can't make them crystal proof, is what you're
They
saying.
can't. Yeah, there's at early. Yeah, sometimes there's just enough marijuana that it happens. Sometimes there's just enough marijuana or alcohol that shit happens. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. I'm curious how many similarities we're all going to have when we talk about our own backlog experience. Dead, roughly how many games would you say you have on your backlog right now?
I actually have an app that helps me keep track of it.
Holy shit.
Well, I do a bunch of everything great about videos. I go through.
Are you recording on your phone?
I am.
You just, for anybody who's listening to the audio, Ded's using his phone, I assume, to pull up the app that tells him about all the games it's tracking, and it's funny because it flipped him sideways, and it's just.
Okay. I thought it showed my screen for a minute. I was like, you might have to edit that out because my background is not quite safe for work.
Nah, you're just flipped sideways, which is kind of apropos because we were talking about the Matrix game, so you kind of did this Matrix move, and I wasn't sure, did he do something with that on purpose, or is he using the same? So what is?
No, that was entirely accidental. So it's just an app called Games Tracker. You can put things into categories of playing, skipped, and finished. I put the games that are like my absolute next thing that I'm playing in the skipped category. But it says that I have 194 games completed out of 515, and that's stuff that I record for my channel.
515 games.
Yeah. And that's just the stuff that I've thought of. That's not even counting the things that hasn't come out or that I haven't thought to put on that list. So it's going to be, I always talk about my ever-growing backlog. That's what it looks like.
Now, for you, does a backlog mean this is a game I purchased and I owned, or maybe it's on my list in Game Pass, or maybe it's something that I downloaded, or is it a list where you go, I want to play this and I'll eventually rent it or download it or buy it, or for some people they emulate it? So how does that backlog work?
It's a bit of all of it. Most of it is stuff that I've bought. I have a problem and I intend to do nothing about it. I shop a lot of digital sales on the PlayStation Network, so a lot of times it's like, I know I want to play this, I will eventually play it. So yeah, I'll buy a $15 game that's marked down from $60 and put it in there. And some of it is a couple of games that I don't quite own yet, but I know for sure that I want to play. But most of them on there are stuff that I do own. There's not a lot for the physical collection back there, but there's some. Most of my stuff is digital because it's just a lot easier to manage.
Yeah, and I know that's probably an entire podcast discussion in itself, right? The digital versus physical.
Yeah.
And I get people wanting the collections because I have this thing about having physical copies, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, it's really kind of just taking up space. Like I'm starting to really kind of appreciate the digital or like the streaming. Oh my God, I just said I'm enjoying streaming games. Shut it down, everybody. Oh my God, Twitter's gonna, oh my Lord, did you hear that? It's convenient. It's easy. It doesn't take up space. It's just, give me the games. However I gotta get them. Logic, what about you? How many games do you have on the backlog?
So as usual, I don't have a straight answer to your question. I would contend that right now, today, at this moment in time, that number is 0.
Good for you. Good for
That's a
you.
hard feat. That's impressive.
It has absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with the games that I've actually completed versus the games that I actually own.
Tell me about what you mean by that. So does that, if you say my backlog is 0, does that mean that there are no games you own that you have left to play?
That I intend or feel any obligation to ever complete.
Okay, so
So,
you're looking at it from the point of I feel obligated to play this. Dead
uh,
has it as I want to play this, so there is somewhat of an obligation there.
right, and that is a like today stance that I've taken. So
Okay.
I mean, and it's been walking in that direction for the last few weeks. But generally, it's because I've made a slight pivot in just kind of how I'm playing now, and will probably play for a significant amount of time in the future. So a lot of the things that you've normally heard me say about the types of games that I like and the genres, um, I've probably recently chosen to pivot out of those. And so I don't feel obligated, when I have a game in my, list of games that I own on Steam, or anywhere else. I don't have right now today any scheduled projected intention to ever go back to those, and pick them up for play outside of like it's a rainy day on a 3-day weekend, and I haven't gone on travel, and I feel like picking something up because my hands are sore from playing super sweaty competitive online shooters.
Or or fucking fighting games. Like you can play fighting games so much. Remember Boki when he like tore his thumbs up playing fighting games so much with his brother Alex? Then he like got these calluses and busted them and had like bloody thumbs from dominating. Well, his words dominate. If you're watching this, Alex, and you'd like to argue the fact that Boki has dominated you in fighting games, please feel free to do so on the thread. Now, for me, I normally don't have a backlog at all. I don't play a lot of quantity of games. I don't really get FOMO. Like it doesn't bother me that everybody's like, I love this game. And I'm like, I'm happy for you, but I don't really feel the need to play. It's just weird that Dead said, let's do an episode on backlog now, because I'm like, oh my God, for the first time as a gamer, I have one. It's 6 games. And I feel so much pressure. I'm like, how am I going to finish 6 games? Other games are going to come out. And then there's some games that I feel like I have to play because I told people I would play them. And then it's like, well, if I'm paying for Game Pass and I put this on Game Pass, do you see what this is doing to me?
Well,
Yeah.
that's one question I wanted to ask. So is this entirely driven by the existence and your subscription to Game Pass?
Part of it is, yes, but I'm not upset about that. I mean, I'm paying for it every month and not really using it a lot. So I kind of said, why make it just for exclusives? I mean, I could go buy those, which I probably would anyway. I might as well see what they have. And they had some banger titles on there that I thought, fuck it. I mean, if you can get games like Mass Effect Legendary Edition with all the DLC or Guardians of the Galaxy. And I've decided, and this is a recent trend for me, I started stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm a very niche gamer. I love like so much lengthy cutscenes, it would put a Zack Snyder cut to shame. Like I love movies, right? Playable movies. I love all that cinematic shit. But I'm trying to get out of my niche, right? I tried Returnal. I'm going to play Elden Ring. I played Death Stranding. So I'm using Game Pass as kind of a tool to play stuff that I wouldn't like. Hellblade might scare the shit out of me. I don't want to commit to buying it.
Right.
But I could rent it on Game Pass and try to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. So I do feel obligation because I'm trying to evolve as a gamer. I'm playing more games. I've played more games already this year than I've ever played in a full year. So I think that's why I have a backlog, is I feel more motivated to try more things and play more things. Whereas normally I'm somebody who says I play fewer games and play them more than once. And now I'm trying to say, don't replay that game immediately. Move on to something else.
Well, and I don't recall from the Game Pass app, especially on an Xbox. Is there a way? So when you talk about this backlog, the games exist in Game Pass. They when you go into a global view, they just fall into whatever you've. I mean, so what mechanically constitutes your backlog? Are you actually downloading and installing these games, or the thing I can't remember, is there a way to like tag games in Game Pass as like your wish list or intend to play or
I
something like
download
that?
them. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure you can. Dad might know. I'm pretty sure that Game Pass has a like a form of a wish list or like a place where you can put something you intend to play. I just downloaded them, and I'm like, hopefully I'll get to them. And then I got a couple games on disc that I haven't. I've a couple things that I don't know. I just started feeling kind of more obligated. I I don't
Well,
know.
and
I actually wouldn't know anything about Game Pass, to be perfectly honest. Mostly because I don't actually have an Xbox of my own, and other thing
Gotcha.
because it's no secret my internet is garbage. I'm having to do this off of my phone because I have no home internet right now because I live out in the flippin' boonies.
I think for some reason I thought you played on PC, so I got that wrong.
I do some things I do things on PC that I can't do anywhere else. Like XCOM, I can play that on a console, but it's a much better experience on PC.
Mhm.
Or something like FTL, Faster Than Light. You can't play that anywhere else, and I apparently just love these games that just are designed to torture me because I've yet to beat any of the XCOM games or FTL, but I keep playing them over and over. Like this time I'm going to do better, and then this time I do worse.
Yeah, that's okay. Let me ask you a question then. Having such a large backlog, right? 500 games is a lot to get to. Does
Mhm.
does that mean you don't replay titles very frequently because it takes away from the time for you to play the next games in line?
A little bit. I don't have a set schedule on when I'm like allowed to do this and allowed to do that. One of the side projects I work on, I still do recordings and little edits here and there, but I like to go back through the Souls games with different builds, record those, put them on my channel, and that's a form of me replaying those games because I love them so much. And then there's other times where like I'll go back and I'll go get the platinum trophy for a game because I really enjoyed playing it. And then there are some times, especially here lately, I've been replaying Near Replicant because I played it last October and it's just stuck in my mind, and I really really cannot get enough of it. So I started playing that again, just kind of here and there when I kind of like the time of night where it's like I don't want to start recording anything because then I feel obligated to play for a half hour to an hour to get a decent recording session in. I don't feel like trying to edit anything because it's the same thing. I don't feel like trophy hunting because I'm just tired. So, that's just kind of I just feel like playing something. So I put it on and I play it and I have fun with it. And now that I've done all the footage, made the video for it, got the platinum for it, I can just re-enjoy the experience and take my own time with it instead of feeling rushed for it.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite thing to do. But I like those kind of games that make you want to replay them multiple times. So
Oh
we
yeah.
did something pretty cool. We did some polls on Twitter because I wanted to see what what backlogs did folks have. So this first poll here, now I mean it's a small group of people. It's 2,360 votes. It's not like I mean it's a pretty small group, but 19% had less than 10 games. Where you at, my people? 21% had 11 to 20 games on the backlog. 16% had 21 to 50. 44% had 51 plus games. So we decided that's a large number that had more than 50 games. So we wanted to do a second poll that had much bigger numbers. And this was much smaller. This was 282 votes. 54% had anywhere from 51 to 250 games. 21% had 251 to 500 games. 14% had 501 to 1,000 games, and 11% had 1,000 or more games in their backlog.
Wow.
So, I mean, when you have a giant, because you have a very big backlog, is it inevitable? I mean, do you ever say to yourself, I'm probably not going to play all these games?
No, I never think of it like that. I just kind of it's mostly what I'm kind of feeling and playing at the moment. So right now with what I'm specifically doing, and apologies for my matrix flip, I'm gonna switch back
Do what
to
you got to do.
that.
Woo!
So right now I've got a handful of stuff that I'm just some of them are just playing to playing. Some of them I've played before. Like right now I'm playing Dead Rising 2 off the record. I can't tell you how many times I've actually played that game. So that's a good put that on and tune out, and I can just record what I'm doing because it's not like a new game to play.
Sure.
But that kind of sparks it into, well, since I'm playing this Dead Rising game, I'm going to go ahead and play the rest of them. So I actually have just that one and the fourth one to do, and then I'm done with that series. But I have games that I'm playing that are like single experiences, and then some that are part of a series, and then that series gets moved up on the tier list with the backlog because I'm like, I started the series, I'm going to work my way through them and go ahead and finish all of them. And then some of the other ones are things that I really want to play and just need to kind of find time to work that into my schedule, like the No More Heroes series. I've wanted to play that for a while, and I'm putting my foot down with myself, thinking, okay, I need to start playing these at some point because I've seen a bunch of reviews and stuff for them, and it's definitely my kind of game. It's weird. It's Japanese. It's hack and slash. The dude has a copyright safe lightsaber. And it's like that's all the things that I like. And then there's also things like for instance, Alan Wake 2 is coming out. It has been I don't know how many years since I actually played Alan Wake. Probably when it came out. So since they came out with the remastered version, I'm gonna play that and try to do the whole trend surf thing and hit that around the time whenever it comes out. And so just kind of things like that. I mean, that goes under, like I said before, the blue category, the skipped category. Stuff that I want to play and is directly next in line. And then there's things like Yakuza, the Yakuza series, where it's like I want to play these. I don't know when I'm going to, but I'm going to play them at some point.
So you have a system in place where you can prioritize what you really want to play versus so you have kind of like tiers of how you approach things. I mean, based on
Pretty much.
feelings, obviously, what you feel, but something you're more excited about versus, yeah, this is something I'll get to one day.
Right. I don't make a habit to trend surf, but if it's something that I enjoy and something that I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and try it. So like I've recorded all the Dead Space games because I knew the remake was coming out and Callisto Protocol's coming out. So those are just ready to go, and I'm going to play those or I'm going to make videos on them, as soon as I get to that part in my schedule. But beyond anything that I might be interested in, I don't try to do trend surf. I just play whatever and make videos on whatever, because I have a bunch of other shit to do, so I don't have time to specifically date out when I have to do stuff. So it's just like it comes out when it comes out. I play it when I play it. I've just accepted the fact that I'm always going to be behind on something. So I just kind of pick and choose, like with Guardians of the Galaxy. I know I want to play it. I just haven't had time to, but I'm not going to let myself dig into the FOMO of it and try to rush myself to playing it when I've got other stuff I want to do.
Go with the flow, gamer. I like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Logic, I want to share a quote from our buddy Steven at the Great Game Debate that I feel like you're going to really appreciate. He said, I have the Schrodinger's backlog. It only exists if I look in the box.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I mean, and that's very true, right? Like, one of my things when I used to acknowledge the existence of a backlog, one of the things that would always hit me is I would always talk about going back and picking up these games that I had dropped off of. And the thing that would hit me would be that save file. That's the thing I would hate, is like pulling up that save file and going, oh, the last time I touched this game was like a year ago or 2 years ago. And so one of the things about this notion of a backlog is the term gets used and the label gets applied and it means different things to different people. I think there is a mathematical truth of what it means that a lot of people choose to ignore, right? So not throwing shade at you, Deadman, but I just use you as a case study, right? 524 games. If I make an assumption that every game is at least 8 hours, that's you to have to game for a full year, full time, right? Doing nothing but sleeping for 8 hours in order to clear that backlog.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, and even for me, when I had a backlog, I never had any intention or expectation that I would play every single one of those games. It was simply, the army warehouse, that scene at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark where the Ark is stored in a big army warehouse. That is simply a digital warehouse of a bunch of inventory that I have at my disposal to select from as I see fit. Just like if I had wines in a wine cellar, I don't know that it would ever be my intention to actually drink every single bottle of wine in the wine cellar. That's probably not going to happen because you're constantly collecting new wines to add to the wine cellar.
That's a
Yeah.
really good point, Logic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the term. I mean, I don't know where the term originated from. In agile software development, we use this term called the backlog. And as I always talk to my teams about, right, there's never every idea that ever comes up goes into what we call the backlog. That does not mean that everything in the backlog is ever going to be, that everything is going to be authorized to be implemented, right, in code. It's just the place where we store all the ideas. And so that's, to me, kind of what I thought about as a backlog in video games. It was just the stuff that I was sufficiently motivated to either go pay for or pay for at discount. Like Deadman said, I used to be bad about like jumping at every Steam sale that came along, right, and piling up a bunch of stuff. But by the same token, like PlayStation Plus, games with gold, I would always grab and tag, right, and put those things in my collection. Now, one of the things that I haven't been super enthused about is I see a lot of the discussion out in the gaming community kind of trying to shame people for application of the term backlog, right? Because they feel like, well, backlog should mean the things that you really intend to get around to. And I'm like, number one, that's a semantic. So I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about it. But number two, I don't think it necessarily has to mean that thing to all people, right?
All right.
It definitely means something different. But you made a neat point. When you have a bar in your home, right? You know that it's not just for you; it's for people and for entertaining. So you stock it with things that your friends like that you know you're never going to drink. I have games that I have purchased just for when friends come over, and I guess I didn't really think that you're always going to have these dynamics that might not directly relate to you and your own personal gaming style. Dead, what were you gonna piggyback on that?
Oh, I was gonna say too, with I can't speak for everybody else, obviously, but with my backlog, I mean, there's been more than a few times I've actually gone through and taken off like 50 to 75 or so games because they were ones that I had in my backlog, and I was just looking at it, and I'm like, I kind of my backlog specifically usually entails the things that I get to make videos over. Now, the other stuff that I buy, that's just completely separate. So the number's actually probably higher than 500. But there's plenty of stuff that I've gone in there and looked at, and I'm like, I really don't want to do a video over this. So I just take it off the list, and if I get around to playing it at some point, cool. If I don't, oh well. Most of the stuff was either heavily reduced or was through PS Plus, so there's been no game I've ever spent full money on that I've just sat on for like years and years and never played it, and then just decided I don't want to play it. But and I think most people should have with their backlog, they should have that assumption going in that you probably won't play everything on your backlog, and it's okay to take some stuff off of your backlog if you're not feeling it, or if you just want to kind of reduce the clutter on it.
I like the messaging there. There's a level of kind of being aware and conscious of it. Like this stuff sitting here, I'm not really feeling it. I'm going to remove it. I like that you're keeping track of it and that you have different labels of it and ways to prioritize it, because that's just neat to me, because I've never had a giant backlog, so it's been relatively easy. Like there's a few games here and it's relatively simple to get to them, and I just play them. So Ardent Vision mentioned something that I thought was pretty neat, because it's something I never thought about. And well, first of all, his backlog is a stupidly large amount. I don't know how many that is, but it sounds like an ass load, right?
That's
Perhaps,
Schrodinger's backlog, is
right,
what it
perhaps
is.
equivalent to a metric ton. But the question asked was, if you play a game in your backlog for a couple of hours and you never return to it, is it out of your backlog? I mean, I guess that would vary depending on the person, but that's just like a great question. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I think it depends on your view on it. If, say I'll use something on mine, for example, I played, I think, 5-ish hours of World of Final Fantasy. It's still on my backlog because I still fully intend to get back around to it. But, if it sits there for a little bit without me playing it, I'm not stressed about it. And if it comes a time when I don't actually want to go back to it, then again, no sweat off my back. If it's really up to each individual person, I think, to debate on whether it gets, off your backlog or not.
Right.
Because I'm me, so I like the majority of everything. I can think of maybe like 3% of things that I've ever played that I just absolutely abhorred and did not finish. But sometimes you play a game and you just don't feel it, so you put it down and never pick it back up. And I don't think there's any shame in that, because not everything is for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I don't consider Returnal to still be on my backlog because I started it. I'm just not going to sit there and spend like 500 hours to get good at it. It's just, it's a great game. It's just very repetitive. So like, I play it in small bursts, which means I know I'll never get good enough to beat it, but I play it when I like to play it, and it's there.
Yeah.
And it's cool for that purpose, and I took it off the backlog. Logic, what did you think about that statement?
I thought I had an answer, and then I started reconsidering some things. I go back to, like, to me, there's a difference in the way that I think the term backlog is applied versus, right, the short list of games that there is a deliberateness and an intentionality about getting around to actually playing. And again, if I were going to put this in development terms, and I have tried this before, I've had systems like this, and then I've broken away from them because they've been too burdensome. But like I had, right, again, applying agile software methodology, right, I have had my entire inventory of games, which I have referenced as the backlog, and then I would try and put games into like a 2-week to 4-week sprint, right? So, which again, these are agile terms, right? The way we break down development time blocks. And so I've had, okay, for these 2 weeks, I'm going to play, let me scoop into the backlog and designate the specific games that I'm going to go after. So, like I said, there was never an intent to go to my backlog to play everything in my backlog. And so, in terms of and what did you say his name was? Ardent.
Hold on, wait a minute. It was Ardent Ardent Vision.
So in terms of what Ardent Vision says, right? I think less that I'm concerned about whether or not it's really in your backlog. There's this notion of games that are in your backlog, or whatever you label them as, that unintentionally and unconsciously kind of slip out of it. And that's, not only the games that you hit and bounce off of and don't gain sufficient traction to drive you back to getting to them, but for instance, I played a lot of racing games, right? So if I played, well, so example, I was sorting through my inventory a couple weeks ago, and I saw, hey, I've put 32 hours into Dirt 4, right? Which I don't even remember when Dirt 4 came out. Let's just call it 2015, right? If I put 32 hours into Dirt 4 and I didn't complete it, and since then, Dirt Rally 2.0 and right, and other games in the franchise have come out, and I never get back to Dirt 4, when did Dirt 4 officially technically slip out of my backlog, right?
See, that's a good question.
And so this leads to questions of, like, again, Dead Man, you threw out the statistics, and I'm just, if you have 524 games in your backlog, do you really have 524 games in your backlog, right? Or are there actually 200 games that you're never actually going to get around? And this is why the people who are being argumentative, right, mostly on Twitter, about, what is the textbook definition of a backlog? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, you own stuff, you're going to play some stuff eventually. Maybe you're in Game Pass, right, and you're subscribed to stuff, games with gold, PlayStation Plus. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the only thing that really matters is how much anxiety and pressure you put on yourself to get to a certain thing. And when you get around to that context, I don't know that backlog is the thing that really drives that management of, whatever you call it, mental health, social anxiety, whatever, even as much as just the short list of games that are in the zeitgeist or the games that recurrently come up in the zeitgeist.
I think it's
Meaning, like you
interesting.
said, Returnal or these Final Fantasy titles that people throw out from time to time, or
I think it's interesting because some people are motivated by, like, I know Dad is very motivated to create a system, right? He's got a system in place for recording videos on his YouTube channel and teaching people things and showing people things and letting people see the gameplay. So he's very motivated by it. Me, I sit there and I go, oh my God, I acquired this and I have to play it. Like, I paid for it, got it, I downloaded it on the service. It's there. That's so many hours. I have to play it. So, like, it's not like literal anxiety, but I feel the pressure of having to do that. Whereas my natural style is, most games I want to jump right back into and play almost immediately. So that's like normally what I would do is play the same game a couple times and then move on. I could spend an entire year and play 3 games, 4 games. So I think it's really just, it depends on the gamer. Alex was talking about how he actually makes a gaming schedule and he makes it a few months in advance. He makes it about 3 months at a time, and then he sticks to it, and that helps him start to make sure to prioritize the stuff that's on. I actually do that sometimes. I'll have gaming blocks where I'll say, this is this time I'm setting aside, like, this is my me time, right? Like some people, meditate or, like read self-help books or like, go do, I don't know, what the fuck ever, realty classes. And me, it's like, I'm going to murk bitches on the street of,
So does he
I'm gonna rob a bank.
does he say that he does that and that is his means of preventing the growth and expansion of a backlog?
No, he let me try to dig into it a little bit. He was just saying that he has a backlog that he separates out with tiers like Dead does. So he's got I'm almost certainly playing this list, which is 10 to 15 games, a maybe list, which is 5 to 10 games, and then he has a third list where the bulk of the titles are, where it's, I'd like to play this, but I probably won't because these are things that I'm okay letting them slip because they're not as important to me. But because he does enjoy the games he really wants to play, he makes sure to put that time aside. And if, he can get to the stuff that's less important, great.
Yeah, that was similar to kind of the way that I would normally think about it. But then, of course, then the other problem with that is then there's constantly new things going into, right, the backlog.
Because there's always these new games. And now that I'm playing new things, this is the problem. I fucking knew I was going to fall into this deep, dark rabbit hole. You Twitter folks have done this to me, right? Now that I've experienced all these new franchises and I like them, well, they're going to have more games. So it's like, I'm going to have more stuff that's going to end up, but that's, I'm enjoying it and it brings me happiness. So I'm good with that. Here's an interesting thing. I think you both may have some really neat opinion on. This is from Daniel Palmar with an A, not an E at the end, Palmar. And this was really cool, actually. Let me get the full context here. He said, I don't have a backlog. I have a collection. Some I'll play and some I won't. So I kind of wanted to inquire deeper what that meant. Daniel's actually a collector, enjoys collecting physical games. Not the point of all the physical games he collects isn't to play them. It's just, I want to own them because I like to collect physical games. So some are retro games that he's collecting just to collect. Some are because it's a specific IP or an anime game. So he's not ever going to play all of those games. Some of them are, I own these just to own them. And some of them are, these are just to play. And some of them are, I might get around to playing these. So what are your thoughts on? I just thought that was kind of interesting because I never thought of that.
That is interesting. I personally have always been of the mind, like with collectors, some people will have held on to their Star Wars stuff from the 80s and now they're worth a bunch of money. And me, I'm like, I bought the damn thing. I'm going to play with it. As far as like collector stuff, I also have that in its own little tier kind of thing. So say something like we'll just use the Callisto Protocol, for example, because it's the thing that I'm most excited for at the moment. I know for sure I'm going to play that because it's the makers of Dead Space, which is my favorite horror franchise. I know I'm going to play that. Because I have such faith in the team, I'm going to go ahead and get the collector's edition because that's the faith that I have in the game and the team, and then I'm going to like it. So that's going to be a day one for me. Now, God, I can't even think of something else to throw out there that I'm not as excited for, but will probably play. But it's kind of along those lines, you know. If it's something that I really, really, really like, I'll go ahead and get the collector stuff for it. If it's a game that I'd like to play, then I'll just, get it day one or get it, the month or two after that. And if it's something that I'm like, I'm kind of unsure about it, but I still think I want to play it, I'll just put it on a list and just wait for it to go on sale. And then, like I said, just get it for $15. And if I don't like it, cool. That's $45 I save by not buying it day one because I was unsure about it.
I'm starting to see the advantage of that as somebody who's branching out and playing like the niche games. There's certain games I know they're going to be my jam. I know they're going to be day one purchases at full price. But now that I'm kind of acting like a normal gamer, I'm starting to see the value of the things that you're talking about and see the mental shift that I'm making when I say like, I don't have to play this day one, right? I can wait and play. I mean, I just finished Mass Effect 1 yesterday. That game is 15, 16 years old. And it's like, this remaster is great. Like I'm starting to kind of see that there's a lot of value there and saying there's plenty of stuff that you can wait on. It doesn't diminish the experience.
So on that note, with what you were saying earlier, is Mass Effect one of those things that is in you say niche, I've always heard it as niche, but is that in your niche category of long cutscenes, yada yada, or is that stepping out of your comfort zone?
Actually, you would think it would be in the kind of wheelhouse that I have. It's different, which is why it's not.
It is because Mass Effect isn't about long cutscenes. Like there's a lot of breaks in between where you get to choose your own thing. So I wasn't really sure where that fell for you.
Yeah, I really like it. I don't know that I would play it multiple times. Mainly quality of life stuff. I game while I do a lot of other things. So if I can't pause during cutscenes and there's not a significant amount of fast travel, that sometimes for me, like that's a time waster for me in a sense. So if they're great games, I don't know that I would want to play them again or play them as often as I'll play games like Fallout or Cyberpunk or Grand Theft Auto or like the Outer Worlds or Horizon or something like that. But they are good. They're a bit different. I don't like a ton of mechanics, which is why I don't play a lot of JRPGs. I don't know why. A lot of mechanics overwhelm me and the learning curve because I'm not used to that. But I'm very much enjoying it. I'm not very far into the second one, but so far I'm a fan. And I don't think I've ever had alien sex in a video game, so it's kind of neat to have some firsts. Yeah.
there is also that.
Yeah.
So how does that rate on your? We were talking about some FOMO before, which is a lot of the discussion with backlogs. How does Mass Effect rate on your FOMO? Since at least from what I've heard, and because I've been praising the game ever since I originally played
That's a great question.
10, 15 years ago. How does that affect your FOMO with it? Thinking, man, everybody's talking about this great game, so I gotta play it because everybody's like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Normally, I really don't care. Like, I'm happy for people that they like stuff, but I'm like, that's a great game. I'm probably not going to play it. That's the cool thing that I'm starting to enjoy about Game Pass is you don't really have a lot of obligation. You're paying for it anyway. You can try stuff. But this is the interesting thing, and I fucking knew this was going to happen. Didn't have any FOMO till I experienced it. And now all I want to do is play like a crackhead and get through all 3 Mass Effects because the way they you can load the save and it changes the next game. That is so fucking dope. That is absolutely in my wheelhouse. That's definitely my thing. Never had FOMO. Now that I've experienced it, I'm having FOMO. So I'm glad that you said that because it's a dynamic I was concerned about being somebody that knows I like to replay games. I have a limited amount of time because, I mean, I'm an adult. And speaking of that, Nebulae made a comment that I really felt like, "Ugh, this is so me." Nebulae says, I try to finish every game at least once. I have that habit too. Like,
Yeah.
I will even finish a game I don't like. Like, I'll even try to come back to it and finish it just to finish. I went through a period of 8 years where I did not finish a game. Even if I didn't really like it, I felt compelled to finish it. And if the game has story arcing, I feel compelled to play it multiple times, like my curiosity, like Quantic Dream games. I have to know all these different things, and I feel compelled to do that. So now I'm probably going to get FOMO on more things because I'm experiencing more things.
Mass Effect definitely goes down that path. Like, so you finished one,
Yep.
when you're on Vermeer, Rex has the, basically the option to live or die. That actually
Jennifer,
changes
yep.
some things in 2 and 3, whether he's there or not. And it's one of those things that it's some of it's minor changes, some of it's a little bit more major, but it changes the context around everything.
I haven't seen
Like,
him in the second one yet, but I was able to save him. But like, I sent Ashley to help the one Solarian, and then I sent Caden to the bomb, and then I panicked because the bomb had to go off because I'm like, I'm blowing this fucker up. So I didn't. Ashley wasn't a character that I wanted to sacrifice, but it happened. It happened. So
oh no, because with that, I don't know if you know, Ashley is a huge space racist. So if you let Rex die, it's actually because Ashley kills him if you don't pull the trigger yourself. If you're like trying to talk him down, she'll kill him. So after
I've been
the
so
very
mad
first
at her. I'd have been like, damn it, Ashley.
yeah. Oh yeah, she's terrible. She's horrible. So now with the lovely knowledge of foresight, I'm like, guess who's stuck on bomb duty every single time now?
And that's why I love to replay games. Even if it's a linear game, when you know what's coming, there's just a different experience. Like, I can
Oh
approach
yeah.
things differently. Mass Effect is very overwhelming because I'm like, where the fuck do I go? What am I doing? Like, but that's like, I mean, your first time playing Fallout or something, you're like, where the fuck?
Oh yeah.
And I'm so bad, like, oh, a marker over here. Oh, a marker over here. My objective's been over there for 400 hours, and I'm like, oh, there's a building here. Oh,
I have had Fallout 4 since I bought my PS4. I have never once finished the damn game because every time I start to make a little bit of leeway, I go and loot a place, I get all the stuff, because now whenever you get junk, you can actually use it. So it's not like I can ignore this specific piece because it has no use for me. But now it's like I gotta go get all of this junk, take it back to my place, use it for crafting, and then by the time I'm like, okay, this place is cleared, I'm ready to go, Preston's like, there's another settlement in need of help, and I'm just like,
fucking Preston.
shit!
I
have never got past like the first couple of missions in Fallout. I played like 40 hours of it, but I haven't gotten anywhere.
I've beaten the whole game 5 times. I've done all the DLC, every faction. I'm such a whore, and that's wasted so much of my fucking life.
Well, so
I mean,
so
if you like it, you
so
like
given
it.
so given those tendencies that both of you have, does anything ever work itself off of the backlog?
Well, I'm just now having a backlog, but I can probably already answer that. Yeah, if I feel like I'm crunched for time, the horror I don't know if Hellblade's considered horror, but I'm a bitch, so that's horror for me. Okay, because I'm a dick and shit.
It's really psychological, so I suppose it can be depending.
Yeah, but
on
I don't want
that.
stuff that gives me anxiety. So for me, I already know that there would. So I think I'm already kind of doing what Dead's doing. There's already things that go, yeah, this is like Mass Effect, Guardians of the Galaxy. I knew were going to be more my thing than like Hellblade or what's eating Judith Grape Finch. What remains of happened to. I don't remember they're like. I don't remember the thing. I gotta run like tiny. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Okay, I'm probably about to get unfollowed. I'm not a fan of Borderlands 3. I don't like pick up. It's just not my thing. There's not a lot of story. I find it repetitive. But I do have Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Logic and I are probably gonna run it. No sleep. Chris Boone. So like there are things I'm not normally into that I find are enjoyable with friends. So I get it. And I'm not really more people are going to unfollow me. I'm sorry you guys. I will play Elden Ring. I'm just not that excited right now I just don't want to do it right now. My real life is just
So,
I just don't want that level of challenge right now.
Your life's fucking you as it is. You don't need a game fucking you too.
Thank you. Thank you. I have had life recently try to brutally with
raw
no
dog you.
lube, like my prison purse, it feels like I feel like life is really so I didn't want that. I don't want that right now from gaming, but it will be something I get to. So I guess now that you ask me and I'm thinking about it on the fly, yeah, I already think I have kind of a system of how that would work.
So is Elden Ring part of your backlog? Because Elden Ring is a thing that I own, but I wouldn't call it part of my backlog because I don't have any intention of going back to it.
I own it. I haven't started it yet. I do have an intention to start it, but I mean, I at least want to try it. I want to see the formula. I mean, that's why I wanted to give something like Returnal a try. So I would say it's on my backlog because I own it and haven't played it. I don't technically own the stuff on Game Pass, but I mean, I paid for the service and downloaded it, so it's there, and I intend to play it. So I mean, yeah, but if I play it for me, my own backlog, I think I would remove it because I guess we make our own rules.
So that's the thing that I guess has always kind of concerned me, just kind of as an outside observer of other gamers, is for a gamer that considers the label of backlog as being an indicator of things that they are obligated to play, and that backlog is beyond any quantification of a thing that is a reasonable objective for a normal adult human being. I just worry and feel like that would be a miserable way to live, like to have that hanging over your head. And I've dealt with the notion of gaming obligation for, I would say for 30 years, right? So 30 years is about the time. I'd say 20 years, right? About the time that I started, like, blogging and writing and working for other websites and stuff. That was the point where I got into the feeling that, okay, there's certain types of things that I have to play, and in fact, to a certain extent, right, made myself feel as like I had many algorithms and processes and means of generating my playlists that were kind of deliberately oriented around preventing me from playing the things that I would naturally acclimate to, right? In order to force myself down the path of, I was talking, was in one tweet exchange with, I forget what the guy's name is, but he mentioned some, I won't call it a complaint, but some concern that too many gamers were kind of sitting in their comfort zone and wouldn't kind of expand their aperture. And I've made similar comments about that, on Twitter as well.
I'm that gamer. Right. I like what I like, and I like what I like, and I'm going to play what I like.
Right. And so part of my backlog, right, was generated because of, if there was a list of 30 games, right, that were, right, critically acclaimed, right, those were things that eventually I found a way to purchase, right, and put in my backlog. And always kind of carried that weight around with me of like some feeling of obligation that eventually I would have to get to those. And some of those were for, because of the podcast, or like I said, because of writing, because I felt, and I still feel to a certain extent, right, that if you're going to, maybe this is a problem that I have with a lot of the commentary that goes on gamer Twitter as well. If you're going to comment on video games, and particularly if you're going to comment on video games in a way that is very, I'm going to stand on this hill and die on it, and this is a religious platform, then in order for, I think we had a conversation a couple weeks ago, to me, it's not about who is a real gamer, it's about who I can have a conversation with. In order for you to be the type of gamer that I can have a conversation with, you have to be a credible enough person to me, and that credibility is established by having experienced a range across the artistic medium, right? People who are hyper focused on one genre or hyper focused on one platform, or have a very, right, limited exposure to what has happened in the media in terms of how it's evolved, are people that I have a kind of difficult time having a conversation with, and get a little glance at them a little askew when they are like very insistent upon like their perspective or point of view. So I lived my life for a long time trying to make sure that I maintain a certain amount of, I don't know, you can call it journalistic credibility, right? In terms of just having experienced a lot of different stuff. I didn't necessarily feel, I grew to a time where I didn't feel obligated to complete that stuff, right? If you play 20 to 25 hours of Red Dead Redemption 2, I feel like you should probably at that point be able to convey a relatively articulate opinion of your perspective of what that gameplay experience is. I don't know that you playing another 15 hours or another 65 hours of it really makes a huge difference, right, to me in like articulating that opinion. And so, backlogs are needed, in my opinion. Backlogs should consist of a certain amount of variety for you to kind of get around, right, the multiverse, so to speak. But I don't know. I don't know that people need to have like that, wear them as a chain around their neck of things that they're obligated to finish.
I'm not a variety person in general. Like what I mean by that is like I like beer, right? But I could drink the same beer that I like all the time. I go through phases with food and I'll eat the same fucking stuff multiple times a week, cooked the same way. Like I'm just very like I could do the same thing with games. I can play the same types of things many, many, many times over and not play a bunch of new stuff. I'm no happier now. I'm not any less happy now. Like my gaming habits have changed and it hasn't made me happier or less happy. But I tend to not I tend to not be a variety person as far as some of that stuff goes. I don't know. Maybe I'm like just very like basic bitch. I don't know.
But I think my personal feeling is just from having been around you, observed you for a long period of time, and I think you and I are kind of the same in that aspect, right? There are the things that I like. If I really like a restaurant, right, in certain points in my life, like there was an Italian restaurant that I just ate there all the time, right? Because it was convenient and it was easy, and I personally really didn't feel like being bothered, right, with any type of science experiment out beyond that. And so I can do that, right? I often mention to my wife, look, I'm in a phase now where I can just eat a bowl of noodles, right, and just chunk some random stuff in on top of it. Like that's fine. And so I can do that, and you can do that. But I've also noticed that you don't necessarily do that, right? You do go out and experience things, right? You do reach and grab for things that are outside that comfort zone, almost in similar ways that I have, right? With deliberate intent of knowing that here's a stack of things that are comfort food, right? Let me reach for the thing that is not that, right? And let me experience that. And I don't know if that's recent or but whatever. I mean, I feel like you do it.
With games, that's been a bit more recent. I mean, I've always liked, the cut scene heavy kind of action adventure games and the RPG stuff. And so, I mean, I've always had kind of the same tastes, but I think I was a little bit more myopic. Like there would be times when I would, just play a lot of like Call of Duty or a lot of Madden. I guess it just depends on like your tastes change, but I like to experience things and I like knowledge and I like to try more, except with food. I'm not food adventurous. I'm a picky ass bitch. That's where I got to draw the line is food. You guys have seen me like on Twitter be like, what the fuck do you like? Like, you can't do it so bad. Yeah, no, I mean, I know what I like, but I am willing to branch out and I am willing to try new things. Hence why I have a fucking backlog. So then I do have a question. Two questions, and we probably should wrap up because we're running on time here. Game length. I fucking hate long games because they take my time, but I fucking love long games because so many of the good games are long. Dead, you have a huge backlog. I now finally have a backlog. Does game length have an appeal when you're deciding how to prioritize? Because some of those games on my backlog, I'm like, I know that I'm going to add these games because they're relatively short. So that makes me feel like, well, that's not so bad. It's 20 hours or it's 8 hours or it's 5 hours. Does that have an appeal to you, being somebody who does have a lot of games to get through?
Well, especially because, I kind of have a loose time limit on things I need to do so that I can, make a video, get it out in a timely manner. I don't mind long games so much as I dislike games that waste my time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I haven't actually, I'm looking at it right now on your, behind you, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've yet to
Oh,
actually play it, but I've heard that to get through the campaign, your rough average is like 60 hours, whereas the Assassin's Creed games used to take you like 15 to 20 hours.
that
I don't
game is
know what it
so
is Valhalla
organized.
does that constitutes the 60 hours plus whatever the DLC is going to end up, however long that's going to take me. But if it wastes my time, I'm going to keep playing it, but it's going to piss me off. Like, or things like Persona 5. I
Oh,
think my very first playthrough was like 70 or 80 hours, but most of that didn't seem like fluff to me. There were some things that could have cut down here and there, but for the most part, the 70 or 80 hours was kind of a given, and it had a good pace, so it didn't bother me. And it was only when I rolled the credits, I was like, holy shit, I can't believe I actually played this game for 80 hours, and then some.
so you played the vanilla game, not the royal.
I, I've got the Royal stuff. I have yet to crack it. I platinumed Persona 5 Vanilla, and
Holy shit.
I fucked up one of my runs, so I had to do a third run. So I think I got a tiny bit burnt out on it. So like I've had the Royal since launch, but I haven't played it.
Wow. I
And that's
spent 130 hours on my first run on royal. Now, granted, I was way out of my element. All those mechanics I had to learn, that
oh
was
yeah,
so part of it really was a learning curve because that's a hard one to. I don't play a lot of JRPGs and I'd never played a Persona. That was a hard one to just jump into and do it blind. That was a
oh
stupid
yeah.
fucking decision.
And that probably necessitated some of that runtime too, is having to learn some of the stuff because
Yes.
I've played JRPGs, like I said, just about as long as I've been gaming, but Persona has, and that's like the series as a whole. You've got the social elements, and you've got a whole bunch of extra stuff that is in the game that, some of it's optional, some of it's a little less optional, some of it will help you make your time lessen, but like the whole thing is a learning curve. So
Yep.
something like that doesn't bother me. Whereas this might get a little controversial, I didn't like The Last of Us 2 nearly as much as I liked the first one because there was a lot of points where I felt like it was wasting my time. Like, the biggest thing that jumps out to me was whenever you were, I think it was when you were Abby. Yeah, you were Abby going through the city, and it was at the point where she was going across from the building to building with the fallen crane on the roof. They could have just as easily had her make it to the other side, but instead you had to take like a 30-45 minute detour because she just had to fall through the building. And I'm like, this seems like unnecessary padding. I
I get
didn't I
that.
didn't hate it. It wasn't a terrible length or anything, but there's a couple spots in there where I'm like, this could have been cut out.
It's
And the game,
pacing.
it wouldn't have hurt it.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
understand
pacing is
that.
my huge thing. And I'm a person that doesn't notice those kinds of things. So when I notice it, you did pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I look and I say, okay, I can spend a month, 4 6 weeks, and play like Persona 5, and another 4 6 weeks and play Fallout 4, and 4 6 weeks to play Valhalla. Or I can play like several Mass Effects, Guardian of the Galaxy, this game, that game. And that's kind of where I'm starting to try and shift is get less, like play less bloated games. Some games are long and they don't
Right.
waste my time. I mean, Fallout makes sense to be a long game. It's part of the narrative. But like
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed
Exploring is part of
Valhalla
it.
was so much longer than it needed to be.
No.
So I feel you. I feel you. What about, and this is where logic at least used to be very into games that I feel like don't really have an end. Like racing games, simulators. Those don't necessarily end. I mean, there may be parts of the story, but they don't they don't just end. When do you decide that okay, this game is done and now it's no longer right now I no longer have the obligation to play or now I beat it or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of my feeling about the time investment in games and kind of what has driven any any notion of a backlog or the absence of one I've been much more grounded on the notion of total time put in, right? And then I go back to that, when have I spent enough time in a game to feel like I've gotten my return on investment, right? And it's great that we brought up The Last of Us 2. No Sleep and I were talking about it today, on Twitter, and hopefully I won't say anything that triggers you, Crystal, because I know it was one of your favorite games. But I feel like a lot of the same way that Dead. Like there's 15 hours of The Last of Us 2 that are, I feel like, chef's kiss peak gaming for me. And then there's a ton of stuff that and those are content consumption things that I have a problem with. I do not like dual track character games. Like I want to be like the one character, right? I have a problem with, across all formats of media, I have a big problem with the notion of the anti-hero antagonist, right? I like good guys and bad guys, period, right? I don't watch things like Dexter, right? Because I'm like, don't try and tell me that he's a good guy, right?
He's not.
And that's just a me thing in the way that I consume media, right? So I had a lot of problems with The Last of Us 2. I did a 21-hour run and a 19-hour run, but I never finished the game, right? But I did it twice, right? Because I felt, not only some of it was driven by obligation, but a lot of it was also driven by, it's a good game. And so I wanted to experience that, right? But
shorter though. They could have cut out some of the bits, like Ted said. Everything's got plot holes in it, right? Plot armor. Yeah. There was plot armor pieces that drove extra hours of content so that they could say we're selling you a 40-hour game instead of a 25-hour game.
Or like, and on that subject with, everybody being like, oh yeah, it's open world. Like the open world means nothing to me if it's dead, if it's empty. I like the Far Cry games. Most of their big open world does nothing for me because it's mostly empty or it's shit trying to kill you constantly.
Can we just have a moment of silence for Ubisoft and just appreciate what Ubisoft used to be? Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago when Ubisoft made bangers, and today it's just kind of like, well, we don't know what we're going to get with Ubisoft.
But yeah, like, with Assassin's Creed 2, that we'll just use that one as example because that's a lot of people's favorites. It was a shorter game. It got to the point. There wasn't a lot of fluff. Everything's going to have a little bit of fluff. The mini-map wasn't like so bloated with little markers to go do shit. It was like you have a handful of things you can do and you can go do them. And then now, like, I platinumed Assassin's Creed Odyssey. That was the first one I'd done since Rogue. Rogue took way too long, and so at that point I was like, okay, I'm not gonna platinum these anymore unless I'm into it. Because I was going through the thing of like, yeah, I gotta get every single one of these because I like the series.
Hey, but Odyssey's good. There goes more of my followers, but Odyssey is fucking good.
Did I say Odyssey? I meant Origins if I said Odyssey.
Origins was good. I know I'm sitting here going, Ubisoft, that doesn't mean they don't still make some games that I like. I'm not saying
Oh, yeah. But even the platinum for that, the world was way too big and it took too long to like completely wrap up. It was very, very good for what it did, and the areas that they had fine-tuned, those were chef's kiss. But then there was a lot of empty space in between them. There was a lot of times where I just set up a marker and let my camel just take me across the map. And sometimes it would be doing that for like 10 minutes straight.
I like
and it's
that
like, this is too long. It's, it's cool that you have this open world and that you have a mostly to scale Egypt. But like, I don't need to spend 10 minutes crossing the desert to get to my next objective. Just like, put me there.
Yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2, I had an issue with, like, I can't fast travel or, like, automatic run a horse. I'm spending so much time galloping across this giant fucking frontier.
That is one thing that I'm glad they put in modern Ubisoft games is the auto drive or auto camel or whatever.
Auto camel.
What was I think it was in 4. It may have been introduced in 5. I don't actually remember which. But after one of those, I was like, okay, I am spoiled now. Any game that doesn't let me, if you're going to give me a big open world, any game that doesn't let me just click the thing and go automatically to the next objective, I hate it because like. I'll use that time and I'll, edit a little bit of my next video or catch up on something else. It's like, if you're going to give me an open world, make it easy for me to traverse at least.
I really
So,
wish.
like,
Sorry, I wish that Mass Effect had more fast travel points. Do you know how much fuel I've wasted? I look so like, talk about a clusterfuck, because I probably should just use a guide and it would be easier. And I'm like, wait, what system do I go to? How do I get to the different? And I'm like zooming in and out of fucking galaxies that are the wrong galaxies and going to the wrong planet. I mean, my poor ship flopping around looks like a monkey fucking a football. Like, where the fuck is this guy going? Wasted so much fuel, but yeah.
And so to go back to kind of the question you were asking me before, right, and maybe kind of offer a counter perspective to some of the things that Dead's saying. The thing to me, and you, Chris, will probably have gotten tired of hearing me say things like this, right? Is, when does a game end? And this is why I am not so high, right, on the near linear wide path kind of format that typifies like a Sony interactive entertainment type of game. A game ends when I say, right? A game ends when I say I'm tired of it, right? I leave companies when I say, you guys aren't sufficiently valuing me. I like streaming TV. We've had this conversation before because I decide what my TV schedule is. A game ends when I say that I've put enough time into it. The Last of Us 2, even though there were elements of it that I didn't like, I spent 40 hours in the game. I played the game that I want to. People kind of rag on me about, when I praise kind of the PC, right? The PC is my preferred platform because it allows me a way to approach games when I see fit. We talk about a backlog, right? And there's been times in my life where a huge chunk of my backlog has just been disintegrated, right? Because when I was on physical media, I made the decision that I was going to go digital, and I took all of my games and all my PC games, right, and I gave them to a buddy of mine who couldn't buy games. So for a moment in time, my backlog was 0. Xbox, I hit my limit of patience and tolerance with them with the Xbox 360 with the red ring of death, and in 2010, I gave up my Xbox. Backlog gone. Right, so games end for me when I say, and therefore the games that I like, right, are actually open world games that give me a huge ton of provenance that will allow me to say, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to approach it. Far Cry 5, I'm a big fan of, right, because I laid out the map and I decided how I was going to go about, right, proceeding through that adventure, and I was able to take shortcuts. Fallout 4, right, I'm a big fan of. I know I did things wrong, but I got the power armor I know that the game was trying to get me to take the dog with me, and I was like, I don't want this dog with me. So I left the dog at the gas station. I got in the armor, right? They said, I can't remember what the name of the city, Diamond City or whatever. They said, your son's probably over here in Diamond City, right? There's all these various things that you can go through to get there. I was like, F that, I don't want to do it. I just got in the power armor. I just walked across the planet, right? And I got it to where I was like a mile or two away from Diamond City, and then I just left the armor in a building and I hopped out and walked the rest of the way. Right, shortcutting all of that stuff in between. So to me, it's the thing that's big for me is player provenance. And if I decide that I want the game, natively, what I like in terms of game length is anywhere from 8 hours to probably 22-ish hours. But what I don't like feeling is I don't like feeling obligated. I like making the decision. Just give me the sandbox. Don't tell me what to do. Just give me the sandbox, and I'll decide right how long I'm going to spend in that world.
I do what I want. Yeah. So we this like, wow. I mean, I feel like people are going to come out of the woodwork for us. Like Logic just pretty much said, like, yeah, I don't love The Last of Us 2 and PC Master Race, and it sold my Xbox and fucked my death. And then I'm over here like the new Assassin's Creeds are actually good. And then like, yeah, we're just speaking blasphemous gaming. Like we're getting anti. we're gonna get it, guys. We're gonna get it. So. As we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about where folks can find you. Dad, why don't you tell us where we can find you on YouTube and streaming? And I'll make sure that you have a link tree. So in the comments on YouTube, as well as if you're listening, you can hop over to Anchor if you're not already listening there now, and get that YouTube link, get the link tree, which will give you the YouTube and the Twitter and stuff like that. But go ahead and let people know, for those folks that are driving down the highway, cruising down the highway, maybe driving home from work, giving us a listen. What is your handle on Twitter?
Well, as it shows up on here, I am Deadman Gaming. You can find me on YouTube. I probably am on Twitter a little too much, but I like reposting a lot of art, so it kind of comes there. I just gravitate towards it. You can kind of find me on Instagram. I never post on there, but I message a few people on there. So if you ever want a more direct way to message me that's not on Twitter or Discord, you can find me on there.
And
And
it's just DED. It's not DEAD like
yeah.
dead man. It's just DED. So dead, but not really.
Always think of the line. I actually learned this later. I thought I came up with it, but I didn't. Um, always think of the line from Princess Bride, or sorry, not Princess Bride. Robin Hood, Men in Tights. He says, "I want him dead." DED, dead.
Oh my God! I watched that movie the other day. I rarely watch movies or TV shows, and I don't even remember what streaming service it was on. I was like, oh my God, we're watching this fucking movie. Somebody who'd never seen it before. I'm like, sit down, shut up,
Oh yeah,
everything off. We are watching this film.
that's one of the best.
God, so good. And the fucking mole keeps moving. Oh man, I grew up in the best era of like comedy. I feel like.
Oh yeah, before everybody got pissed off about everything.
Yeah, just Saturday Night Live was so good. Like In Living Color was the shit. Like we had Richard Pryor and like, God damn it, what's that other guy's name?
George Carlin.
Yeah, but what's the other guy's name? He did movies with Richard Pryor. Gene Wilder. Like we had like some of the best sketch comedy people of like my lifetime. Man, I'm glad I grew up when I did for the comedy. Logic, where can we find you, my man?
So if I can do this, I'll try and do it quickly, but in a little story, because I want to give a shout out to my man Pillow Fort. So something Pillow Fort mentioned that relates to where you can find me is he made mention of a term, infinite backlog. And what it made me remember is in the days before I started my YouTube channel, I think I had like a Tumblr page or something like that. And I could use to kind of also use that term, which again goes back to this topic of backlog. Because I used to feel that my backlog was infinite, right, across so many platforms. So similar to Dead Man, it was hundreds of games on Steam, games across Xbox, PlayStation, yada yada yada. And when I started my YouTube channel, infinite backlog I think was taken, and so I went and searched. You just brought up comedy. One of the great comedians, in my opinion, of the 1980s was a guy named Stephen Wright, who was a very he used to make these jokes about semantics. So he used to kind of take a word or a term or a phrase and kind of spin it on its head. And so one of the things and he used to deliver everything in this deadpan voice. And so one of his lines and one of his jokes was, he's like, I think it was something like, every once in a while on Friday and Saturday nights, I just sit at home and try to round off infinity. And so that's a mathematical joke. And so the name of my channel is Rounding Off Infinity. And I realize that over time, if I think about this journey over the last 7 or 8 years, I think really what I've been trying to do was to transition from infinite backlog to an effective rounding off infinity. And so going from a point where I felt my backlog was infinite and I would never like play everything to a point where I just no longer acknowledge the notion of any obligation to play any of that stuff, and I'm just going to play what I want and play it at my leisure. I think that's maybe an effective label to kind of put around at least what I've been discussing things from as far as a perspective on this episode.
I wondered where you got that name from, and I never thought to ask. That makes more sense now, and it comes from the kind of joke that would be a very logic joke, like that kind of math joke.
That's like fucking beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, it is cool. He's got blogs and all kind of fun stuff. Logic has all kinds of fun stuff floating out there. You just gotta check him out and see all the witty intellectual stuff that he comes up with. Well, what a wonderful episode. So yeah, bring on that backlog, or fucking don't. It's up to you. You make the rules. We make our own rules. Just game on and be happy, everybody. So thank you, Dead Man, for coming on. Hopefully we'll have to have you back.
No problem. Oh, absolutely.
Definitely have to have you back and talk about some more fun stuff. And everybody knows we're going to see Logic again, folks, because he and I are little besties, like chocolate and peanut butter in a little Reese's peanut butter cup. So thanks everybody for watching and listening. Thank you again to my two beautiful, amazing guests, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.